going to tell you a story that is dark. I'm going to tell you a story that is light. I'm going to tell you a story that's sad, that's hopeful, helpful. Sometimes it's beautiful, sometimes it sucks. The story is called life. Life can happen to us, or it can happen for us. It's part of what we get to decide. I've been suicidal many times in my life. Once as a kid, I can barely remember it. Not really sure why, doesn't really matter. But I faced it again in 2017, 2020. In 2017, I started having panic attacks. I started to feel disassociated from everything around me. I felt like I was watching myself walk through life. I was observing, time slowed down, worked in a weird way that I wake up in the morning wanting the day to go fast. I get home, feels like it went fast, and then all of a sudden it slowed down and I wanted to rest. And then all of a sudden the next day it would just happen again. The cycle continued day after day until I started looking at myself in a mirror and questioning whether I wanted to be here. I didn't share this with anyone. I just isolated myself intentionally because of the perception of what that would mean. Am I weak? I didn't even tell my wife at the time. I felt that people would just see me a certain way, make fun of me, tell me I'm weak, not see me for who I was. I knew this had to change. And so I started to make better lifestyle choices. Took me a while, took me about 2 years, just eating healthier, focusing on my body. I made changes in my life that seemed very small, but in hindsight made huge differences. I left one job that caused me a lot of this friction and pain. I moved on to something that was more manageable, something that can handle my stress. In 2019, I thought I was healing. And then all of a sudden, my wife had asked me, or told me that she wasn't happy, that something wasn't right. We tried therapy for a few months, and then all of a sudden, COVID hit. She moved out, and then once again, I was isolated and alone. I had little human contact for the next 8 months, except for Zoom calls for work and maybe to hi to a neighbor nearby. The fear took over me so much that I started to prep for the end of the world. I spent thousands of dollars on survival gear. I started to buy all of these things to make me feel safe because I felt lost. It wasn't all fear-based though. The 8 months in isolation kind of provided me a lot, provided me time to reflect. I began to find myself again. I started to paint, started to draw, I started to build. I started to create things for me, and I started to find my identity with them. Right as that happened, I found someone new. The connection was intense, and it unlocked part of my heart that was closed off. The relationship seeded an idea that I could have, that I could desire, that I could want. It re-sparked life inside of me. The relationship itself was chaotic. It had ups and downs, whirlwinds of emotions, and ultimately was a tipping point, major tipping point for me. I found myself broken, feeling broken after that ended. I had sold my house, my divorce was official, and now I moved into a new place away from all my friends and family. Again, like 2017, I felt isolated. The suicidal ideation came back. and it came to a boiling point. For weeks, I kept looking at my gun. I kept looking at ropes. Not that I didn't think I deserved the pain or the suffering from those thoughts or that action. I didn't feel like I deserved to be punished. I was just in so much pain, I wanted it to end. There was no logic. I tried to rationalize the thoughts, tried to talk myself out of it. I mean, I've done it before. But when you're in this place, there is no logic. There's nothing that can get in the way. But it was time to face it. The universe has a way of forcing you to face everything that you do to build you stronger than you were before. I had to face the pain. Finally, I fell to my knees, crying, like I had before, but this time was different. This time, I asked the universe for help. I surrendered. I'm at your service. I can't do it myself. In that moment, I felt hands on my shoulders. I felt as if I was lifted and I stood. I felt lighter. The tears stopped and the thoughts stopped. There was a lightness. There was a relief. And that was the moment that I started to live. Why? I asked myself. Why did I reach this point? Not to rehash the suffering, not to rehash the pain, not to put blame anywhere else. But I wanted to understand. The result was that I was responsible for that pain and suffering. For the longest time, I kept giving myself to others. My identity was tied up in others, external of myself. I gave up my power. In 2017, the main trigger was work. For 8 years, I've been working 70 to 90-hour weeks. I put my heart and soul into the company. And in one day, my boss threatened my job. My entire identity was lost. I had no idea who I was. Everything that I put in, what I had believed was my identity, came crashing down. In 2019, my marriage was over. Again, something that I put a lot of effort into building. The relationship, the partnership became an identity. 2021, I sold my first house that once again, I put a lot of effort into rebuild, fix. 2021, another relationship ended. All of this happened at once. The commonality of all of it was that I lost myself. I kept sacrificing myself for others, thinking I was doing the right thing. But what I was doing was making my identity contingent on everybody else around me. I was in the victim mindset. The world was being done to me. People were doing things to me. I blamed my bosses. I blamed my partners. I blamed my friends for abandoning me, for doing whatever else. It's funny, I think about what it means to do the spiritual practices. What does it mean to do mediumship or healing? And it all comes down to identity, our own identity, not something that's tied up in everywhere else or everybody else. In order for us to be better practitioners, we must understand our own energy. And we must continue to work on ourselves. We must learn about ourselves so well that we know exactly when it's somebody else's energy. We need to know what is our dark, what is our light? What is our sadness? What is our joy? Because if we don't understand ourselves and our own energy, if we don't understand our own filters created by society, by beliefs, by things our family taught us, they will be projected on everything and everyone around us. That's what creates the belief that everyone is doing this to us. If we don't take responsibilities for ourselves, our lives, our emotions, we project it. That was what I was doing. My pain and suffering came from projecting my own insecurities, my own issues with my identity to others. I was just completely unaware. So when we start to take responsibility, when we take ownership, we can start to heal. The answer comes down to one simple thing: choice. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to suffer, but it is your choice. Reminds me of a story, ancient Chinese story actually, called Farmer's Luck. Some of you may know it. There once was an old farmer who had worked on his crops for many years. One day his horse ran away. Upon hearing the news, his neighbors came to visit. Such bad luck, they said. Maybe, the farmer replied. The next morning the horse returned, bringing with it 2 wild horses. The neighbors came back and said, such good luck. The farmer just simply replied, maybe. The following day, his son tried to ride one of the wild horses. He was thrown and broke his leg. Again, the neighbors came over, offered sympathy, said, such bad luck. Again, the farmer replied, maybe. The day after, military officials came to the village to draft young men into the army. Seeing the son's broken leg, they passed him by. The neighbors came by. Such good luck. The farmer replied, maybe. The farmer's luck, the story, highlights our choice of perspective. We can choose to shift our perspective. We can choose to take action and choose to be happy. When we choose to take ownership of our circumstances, we begin to heal. This process will allow us to improve relationships around us, improve our communication, our response to emotions, and our overall well-being. As I said before, suffering is our own creation. If we grabbed a piece of barbed wire, we would undoubtedly hurt ourselves. We would cut our hands, and that would be painful. But it happens. It will heal. But many times, what happens is that we think the barbed wire offers something. Therefore, we hold on to it. We grip tight. The initial pain will go away. However, because we don't want to release it, it will go deeper and deeper. The idea of opening our hand to heal now becomes more powerful than the idea of healing itself. But the only way for us to heal is to open our hands and let go. So this is what I mean when I say suffering is our own creation. We decide what we want and how we want it. The how is thinking that we need what the barbed wire offers. The how is believing we will only get satisfaction, joy, happiness from an external source. like a person or a job or this thing to happen the way we want it to happen. The how is holding on to a story that we told ourselves. This overall concept is difficult, and it's even harder to implement. But that is why we have community. That is why we have people to ask for help along our healing journey. If we can accept, if you can accept that you're holding on to stories you told yourself, and you are willing to let go, you can heal. It's a choice. You can choose you, and you can choose to heal. You may have heard another story, the story of two wolves. It's an old Cherokee teaching. And basically, a grandfather was talking to his grandson, and he tells him how there's a battle going inside of himself. One is a dark black wolf who consists of arrogance, regret, greed, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, and the list goes on. The other is good. The other is a white wolf who feeds or shares empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, faith. And this happens for all of us. So the grandson, the little boy, asks, well, who wins? The one you feed. Just because the answer is simple doesn't make it easy. It is hard. And this difficulty comes from our own emotional blocks. These blocks come from our past experiences, traumas that have conditioned us and force us to believe that we don't deserve quality care and compassion, that we aren't important, or worse yet, that we're a burden to people around us. The action that we take to move us forward is difficult. It's scary and it takes courage. Isn't it always easier to give advice rather than receive? This is because taking action means we have to face ourselves and say, I deserve to be healthy. I will prioritize myself. I am important. I love myself. The farmer's story also represents this idea of those open pens from the barbed wire story. It represents the idea of surrender. We should approach the world with open hands. When something good comes into our hands, we say thank you. If it decides to leave, we say thank you. When something bad comes into our life, we say thank you for the lesson. We don't grab down on the barbed wire. We stay open and let it go. When I look back on the moments when I didn't want to be here, I started to ask myself and shift my perspective into a single question. What lesson is the universe trying to teach me? The things that I learned from this, there can't be light without dark. Love without pain, good without bad. I felt so much pain when all those things ended, but I realized one thing from it. I understand what love really was. I was suffering or I felt that pain because I loved so much. We tend to shut ourselves down because we don't want to experience the pain again. But what do? We block ourselves from love. I learned choice. When I turned from 2 to 4, I can now look at everything as I have a responsibility in this. I can impact this. I learned to surrender. I learned gratitude. And then I was able to learn to take action. So the story of life, good or bad, depends on your perspective. Depends on what you choose. So I'll leave you with one question. Are you going to view life from the filter of the victim? Or are you going to view life from the perspective that's happening for you?